Hello and welcome, I'm your CodeMonkey. In this lecture, we're going to learn about the switch. This lets us very easily test comparisons against multiple possible cases. Okay, so here we have the code that we wrote in the previous lecture. We have a bunch of ifs chained together. Technically, this works, but it becomes a bit hard to read. To do this kind of logic, there is a much better way when we want to test multiple different cases, and for that, we want a switch. To do that, first we write switch, and then we write the value or variable that we want to use in our comparison. So in this case, let's use the same name variable. Then we open and close our code block, and now inside here, we write case, and then afterwards what we want to compare against. So in this case, let's compare against the name CodeMonkey. Then we do a colon, and down here we write whatever code we want to execute if the switch variable matches this value. So let's do the exact same thing. And finally, we end the case by using a break. Yep, just like this. This is a valid switch case. Let's just add the other two. Yep, just like this. So basically what we have down here is exactly the same thing as we have up here, except instead of having a ton of separate ifs, we just have a switch. We just write our name variable once, and then individually each value we want to compare against. And if the value in here, it exactly matches the one here, then it's going to run this code. If it perfectly matches this one, it's going to run this one, and so on. Basically, when the code gets to this line, it is going to grab whatever value is stored inside of name. Then it's going to compare against each one of those cases, and when it finds a match like this one, then the code goes inside and runs this line of code. Then when it reaches a break, this one tells it to break out of the switch. So it skips all of these and jumps and continues executing down here. Basically, the switch is really great when you want to compare one value against many different values. It is much simpler to use a switch as opposed to a ton of if-elses. Then the switch also has a special case called default. And basically the code here is going to run if the value that we choose up here does not match any of the values inside any of the cases. If it does not match any of them, it is going to run the default. So here is the interactive demo. I've got a bunch of buttons up here that I can use to modify the string name. And yep, we can see which switch is going to run. So if the name is CodeMonkey, then it's going to run this case, and it's going to change the outline color into white. If I click on Ironman, then the name is now Ironman, so it is going to run this one and put the outline in white, and put the outline in yellow. If I choose Black Widow, then it's going to run this one. And if I choose Spider-Man, which does not match any of these three, if so, then it's going to run default and run like this. Now, if you forget to write a break, so if I remove this, technically this is still valid code, as long as there's it. This one causes an error. It tells you that control cannot fall through from one case label onto another one. However, if we erase this line of code, yep, now this one is perfectly valid. So if up here I change the name into Iron Man, let's see what this code runs. And yep, it says hello Black Widow. Basically what this is doing is if the value up here matches either this case or this case, if it matches either of those, then it's going to run this line of code. So you can have multiple cases run the same line of code, although normally you usually want the code to execute only the code inside that case. You want each value to execute a different thing. So in most cases, you want to use a break at the end of each one. That way, it is very clear what code runs on what case. Also, if you don't assign a default, so if I erase this and I put, let's say, Spider-Man, if I put it which does not match any of these cases, then yep, it simply does nothing. So if it does not match any of the cases, then nothing inside the switch runs and just continues running afterwards. And over here, I'm using a string, but you can use literally almost anything else, like an int or a char. So you can do int age, and then do a switch on the age, and inside do the same thing. So case 10, and over here we've got age 10. We can do a default, we can do all kinds of things. And yep, all of this works. Okay, so here we learned about the switch, which is extremely useful. Next, let's finally learn one extremely powerful feature in any programming, functions. So let's learn about those in the next lecture.